All right, well, welcome everybody to the Day Trading Academy podcast. I have the legend in the building, Mr. Jim Rogers. Needs no introduction. Jim, thank you so much for doing the podcast. I appreciate it.
I am delighted to be here, Marcelo. It's been a while. Where are you physically right now?
Currently in the U.S., avoiding all the zombies, the coronavirus zombies, but I am based in Latin America. I'm normally around the Medellin area, which I know you've talked about a lot.
Yeah, no, that's why I was asking, because I thought I knew you were in Colombia. I didn't know where you were right now. So you're where in the U.S. are you? Hooray. Okay, go ahead. It doesn't really matter. Go ahead. I'm in Singapore, as you know.
Okay. Now, you talked a lot about the economic calamity that's coming, Jim. I've heard you say several times that we're approaching the worst crash of our generation. Well, first thing I want to ask you is where's your hideout? Where are you going to be hiding out when that happens?
Well, I think everybody should watch Day Trading Academy to find out. How do I know? That's why I'm here, to figure it out. What I said was, in 2008, we had a big problem because of too much debt. And I have said since then, the next time we have a problem, it's going to be the worst in my lifetime because the debt is so much higher everywhere. I mean, to me, it's a perfectly obvious statement. Nothing unusual about it. The next one has to be the worst in our lifetime since the debt has gone up even in China. Even China has debt now. So where do you hide out? Medellin is obviously a very good place. Medellin's beautiful. Colombia's having wonderful changes now. Not going to be a war in Medellin. Nobody wants to fight in the mountains. So no, it's probably a very good place to hide out. Agriculture is a good place to hide out because there have been problems in the past few decades. Maybe silver. I've been buying silver, gold. I've been buying gold. I didn't buy gold after 2010 until 2000, but last summer I started buying gold and silver again. Who knows?
Now, since you have talked about gold and silver, the opportunities that you see, are they mostly physical, or would you recommend things like miners or ETFs or things like that? You prefer the physical metal, correct?
Well, everybody has to figure out their own way, Marcelo. They're different in sundry ways. If you know the right gold miners, obviously you'll make a fortune. But unfortunately, there are hundreds of gold mines in the world. There was a famous American author named Mark Twain, and he once said, the definition of a gold mine is a hole in the ground with a liar standing at the top. So you must be very, very careful. If you get the right gold mine, you will make a huge, huge fortune. But as I say, there are lots of them. ETFs, if you know what you're doing. Physical gold. I mean, I like some physical gold. You never know when you might have to go down to the shop and buy a loaf of bread or something. Having a bar of gold, not going to do you much good in the grocery store, but maybe some coins might help. Have various and sundry ways depending on what you know.
After the aftermath, or after we get this crash of our generation, what do you think the result is going to be? World currency, the SDRs, or government coin? What are your thoughts about what's going to come after?
Well, that's a very good question. Money is definitely going to be on the computer. There's no question. It already is in China. I mean, they're way ahead of the rest of us. You cannot take a taxi in China with money. They don't know you can't buy an ice cream in China with money. Everything is on the phone, as you know. I guess you know. So money is going to be on the computer. It's going to be government money on the computer. Governments love it because first of all, money is expensive. They have to print it, they have to transport it, they have to guard it, they have to account for it. So they love to get rid of money. And if it's on the computer, they will know everything you do. Gives them even more complete control. They'll call you up and say, Marcelo, you've been drinking too much beer this month. Cut down on your beer. Too much coffee, whatever. They'll know everything you do. So governments like it. I, of course, do not like it, but they don't care. So it's going to be on the computer. That's the first thing you need to know. It's going to be government money because they will control it. Again, I don't like that, but that's the case. There are various incentive things that one can do going forward. One should certainly, like you, have more than one residence, more than one possibility anyway. One should have assets in more than one country. You never know. You never know what might happen. Plus, there are great opportunities in more than just one country in the world. One should be aware of what's going on in the world and be prepared.
Now, the Bitcoin halving is coming in a few weeks. I personally agree with your opinion about it. Why don't you share with everybody what your thoughts are on Bitcoin, or if you see a future with the cryptos?
Well, I've already said that money is going to be on the computer. It already is on the computer. It's not going. There've already been hundreds of cryptocurrencies which have disappeared, as you know, gone to zero. In my view, they all will go to zero in the end. And the crypto guys say, Jim, listen, we're smarter than the government, and they certainly are. They're certainly smarter than the government. That doesn't say very much, but the government has the guns. In the 100 years ago, we could use anything we want. We could use gold coins for money. Banks could print their own money. You could use it. You could use seashells. You and I could make any deal we wanted. But then the Bank of England said in the 1930s, from now on, it's an act of treason to use anything for money except our money. Well, Marcelo, treason means they execute you. So people stopped using other money, and that will happen again. Governments will make it illegal if cryptocurrencies become very successful. Do I like it? No, of course not. Is it going to happen? As I said, they have the guns. We don't.
And right now we're in the situation with the whole coronavirus shutdown. Obviously, we're experiencing what hasn't been officially confirmed yet, but a recession. Where do you see the world markets about a year from now?
Well, let's see, a year from now. That's May of 2021. I suspect that the bear market would have taken hold again. Right now, governments everywhere are printing huge amounts of money, spending huge amounts of money. So, of course, we're having a rally. There's an election in America in November. They all want to get reelected. They don't care about you or anybody watching. They don't care about old people, young people. They care about the election. But after that, boy, this is leading a huge. America was already the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. Now America's added staggering amounts of money in just 3 or 4 months. It's going to be crippling. It's going to be a problem for America going forward after this. 100 years ago, Britain, United Kingdom was the most powerful country in the world, richest. They started making the same mistakes we're making now. We, the U.S., are making now. And I mean, UK is not, it's still there, but comparison with 100 years ago of what the UK was then and now is non-existent. So young people in America don't have a great future to look forward to.
And with the situation we have now, we have a lot of governments pointing fingers, China against the US, US against China, vice versa, Europe. How do you think that the world should deal with China under the circumstances?
What do you mean deal with China? China, it happened. The tests are now showing it started in Paris, actually, but that's irrelevant. It was an epidemic. It still is an epidemic. And we have to deal with it. It looks like most Asian countries have dealt with it better than the West. I mean, I don't like saying it. I'm an American. But China's open. I mean, people in China are going to the disco, going to the restaurants, out shopping. Korea, many places in Asia, they're open already. Certainly not in Europe or America. We have not done a very good job, apparently. So when you say how should we deal with them? We should all try to be friends and open our borders and trade and get prosperity. Unfortunately, throughout history, Marcelo, politicians love to blame the foreigners when there are problems. If an economy goes down, the first thing politicians do is blame the foreigners. They have different skin, different languages, different food dresses, their food. The food smells bad. They smell bad, and their food smells bad. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people say, and their food smells bad. So it's very easy to blame the foreigners. Throughout history, that's what politicians and governments have done. First thing you do is blame the foreigners, and it's happening again. Is it good for the world? Of course not. We should be embracing the foreigners and trying to work together to bring prosperity, whoever the foreigners are, whether they're Venezuelans or Colombians, whoever they are. But are we doing it? No.
And we had a lot of news recently as well about U.S. companies trying to possibly take their supply chains out of China, Japan as well. There was a news today saying that India wants to be able to attract those businesses into India. With this whole situation, do you think China's going to be better off or worse off?
Well, if all of that happens, we're all going to be worse off. The reason companies put their factories in other countries, whether it's China or Vietnam, wherever it is because they're more efficient and cheaper. Sure, we can take TV set manufacturing back to the U.S. We will not be competitive. It will not be good for American citizens. A few will get jobs, but TVs will be more expensive, less quality, etc. Yeah, it can happen. It's happened before in history. We've had periods in history when the world was opening up, and we've had periods when we were closing off. Maybe we're entering a period where the world's going to close off again. It's never been good for the world, but it didn't mean it didn't happen. Yeah, sure, we can manufacture T-shirts in the U.S. again. Not going to be very cheap T-shirts when we do it. And we will not, the U.S. will not be competitive with the rest of the world.
No, moving west, you've talked a lot about the opportunities in Russia, the ones that you've said or seen. Now, considering that Russia might be turning a little bit more authoritarian, do you see a problem with that, or do you continue to see more opportunities there?
More authoritarian than what? Than 1927? than 2007? But certainly Russia in the last few months, years, has closed off or become authoritarian, as you put it. China, too, has closed off. I mean, China opened up for 40 years and was extremely exciting. America's closing off. Is this good? No, of course not. That's, as I said before, we've had periods in history when people were opening and periods in history when people closing. Unfortunately, it looks like we're now in a period in history when people are closing. To repeat, it was not good historically when people did this. Did they do it? Yes. Are they doing it now? Yes. Is it good? No.
And in Europe, we have a situation where they have a lot of strain because of the debt and other things as well. What do you think about the direction of Europe? Are we going to see a collapse in the euro or possibly a 2 euro system? How do you see that?
Well, again, when things go wrong, politicians blame foreigners. In Britain, it's been a successful policy by politicians to withdraw from Europe. So other politicians, and many movements in Europe to do the same thing, many movements in Europe to pull out of the euro. This is going to encourage those politicians because they will say, the British did it, we can do it too. And you're going to see more pressures like that. And yes, as the economies get bad and as the world has problems, especially big debtor nations, you're going to see more movements to pull out of the euro and more movements to pull out of Europe. Some will succeed because things are going to be bad. Is it good? No, the euro would be wonderful. The world needs something to compete with the US dollar. On paper, the euro was great, but unfortunately, the construction, the execution of the euro has not been very successful, and therein lies the problem.
Nothing like bureaucracy, right, Jim?
What they should have done in England and in the United Kingdom, instead of voting to leave the euro, the European Union, they should have voted to abolish Brussels. Brussels is the problem. The bureaucracy, as you put it, and you're exactly right. Brussels, the bureaucracy, the nutty bureaucrats in Brussels were the problem, but Europe didn't, the UK didn't take that approach. They left instead.
Since you mentioned England, with what the future that lies for England, do you think that London can possibly lose its capital as the center of international finance?
Well, of course, it's going to be certainly diminished. First of all, the UK has huge problems of its own. I mean, for all we know, the Scots are going to try to leave again. The Scots tried to leave once before. Now they're talking about it again. If they leave, the Northern Irish are going to leave. Then, but even if they stay together, you know, London is going to lose a lot of its position because the Europeans are not going to say, well, you left the European Union. Now we're going to do business. We're going to have our financial business in London. No, they're going to say, listen, you left, good. If that's what you won't leave, we're taking our business to Frankfurt or Amsterdam or Paris or some other place. So no, is this good for London as a financial center? Of course not. The Europeans are not going to be flocking to London like they did in the past.
And talking further west now in Latin America, where I've been based the last few years, we've had a lot of situations with unstable governments. We had Correa in Ecuador, Morales in Bolivia, Kirchner in Argentina. Obviously, Venezuela has been a basket case for quite a long time now. What do you think about, or your thoughts about investing in some of these unstable Latin American governments?
You know, I hope, Marcelo, you can figure out the solution because you know, you go to Latin America, they've got it all. They've got natural resources, they've got beautiful settings, they've got lots of smart people, and somehow or another they keep messing it up. I don't know why. I cannot figure it out why they keep messing it up. But you name some countries that are fabulous countries and have been fabulous at times in their history. You know, 150 years ago, when Europeans were thinking of immigrating to the Western Hemisphere, the choice was Argentina or the United States. Well, the smart ones went to the United States. The ones who weren't so smart went to Argentina. I mean, you know the rest of that story. You know, there are very few, quote, what we call them, native Americans in Argentina. They're all Europeans. You know, they speak Spanish with the European. I mean, they speak Italian. They call it Spanish, but it's really, anyway, the point is, I don't know why the Latin American countries keep bungling it. Maybe you have an answer to that. Let's see if you get the timing right. Sure. If you get the timing right, you can make a fortune. If you bought Argentina at one of the times just after it defaulted, you probably made a lot of money for a while. Right now, Venezuela is a basket case. I would like to invest in Venezuela. I cannot because I'm an American citizen and there are sanctions. But I have learned that if you invest in a place that's a catastrophe, normally you make a lot of money in a few years. But I cannot do anything in Venezuela as much as I would like to. But that's in my experience, Marcelo, and you know, Day Trading Academy, you know, maybe you know better. You have to wait till these things collapse. Then you get involved when the new guys come in, and for a while the new guys say the right things and do the right things, and you can make money. But so far, none of them have lasted decades. And I don't know why. I wish somebody could figure it out.
You know, one of the funny things, what I'm doing for my retirement is actually planting black walnut trees. Partly because I've heard you talk about agriculture. I'm not giving you any commission though, Jim. Just FYI, I'm gonna keep 100% of that. But when in Colombia, because you know I've told you I got the coffee finca there and everything, and there's nothing to bother, no plants, no deer, no voles, like nothing to attack the plants. And here, when we're planting some of these trees, we have all kinds of animals. You have to take protective measures. And it's, you know, I think about that sometimes because literally Colombia, in terms of agriculture, could do so well. Obviously, you know, that's why the cocaine industry is so big there. Now the marijuana industry as well, like you told me before. But it's amazing, like you said, they literally have everything in their fingertips and they just don't do anything about it.
Well, if you get the timing right, yes, Latin American countries do extremely well. in Peru when they got rid of the shining path, with this horrible guerrilla movement. They did great for a while. I mean, pick a country. Whenever they get rid of a collapse, they do well for a while. But as I said, there are none that have done well none that even lasted for decades. I mean, Cuba's lasted for decades, but I wouldn't use that as an example of being a good place to do anything. Nearly all, and I want to make sure I got this right. Maybe Belize, but there's not much you can do in Belize. No, none of them have.
Chile, Jim?
What? Chile's had periodic periods of great success. Yes. Yes, that's what I'm saying. If you get it right, after one of these places collapses, and right now Chile's still, well, it's not doing as well now as they were a decade or two or three ago. But yeah, if you get one of them right, but you're not old enough to remember, Chile was communist, what, 71, 72, 1971, 1972? No, you got to get it right, the timing right.
Now, I've heard you say on various occasions, Medellin is one of the most exciting cities in the world. I've been living there now for 6 or 7 years. Can you share? I have a lot of students and traders there in Medellin in Colombia. Can you share with everybody why you think Medellin is one of the most exciting cities in the world?
Well, first of all, the location is just gorgeous, as you well know, and it has attracted a lot of gorgeous and smart and exciting people, as any place like that does. I have learned that when you get any country that ends a war or ends a civil war, it's usually a great opportunity because everything is cheap and ignored, and there's not a lot of energy or capital, and that describes Medellin. You sound like you're Argentinian with your Spanish. Medellin is certainly one of those cities, and as I said before, if and when World War III comes or big wars come, history shows that most wars are not fought in mountains because it's not very efficient. So there are a couple of other very exciting cities in the world, but none have a mountain location like you do in Medellin. Is it going to work? I don't know, but it certainly seems right now it's on my list of a very exciting place to be.
I see you're drinking coffee there, Jim. Do you like to drink coffee a lot or no?
Well, I'm drinking tea. But yeah, I do drink. No, I drink coffee every
drinker?
morning. I just finished a lot of coffee. Yes, it's morning here.
I'll make sure to get with your assistant. I'll send you a few bags of the coffee I have on the farm. It'll be the best you ever tasted. I guarantee it.
Okay, I'm sure it will be. I'm sure, but I thought you were planting black walnut trees.
Well, that's up in the north. Like you said, diversify, different countries, different continents. They're not put my flag on in one place, as the great Jim Rogers advises.
Well, you should have interest in more than one country. Yes, everybody should.
Now, Colombia isn't without challenges. We had the situation with oil collapsing. The government there in Colombia receives more than 50% of the revenue from oil. They reported that they have suspected 4 million immigrants from Venezuela. Is there anything that could challenge the growth or, the boom that Colombia and Medellin has had over the last few years? Do you think anything can kind of derail that?
You just described some of the problems that Colombia can have. But, Marcelo, America became the most successful country in the 20th century. But along the way, we had many depressions with a D. We had a horrible civil war. We had massacres in the streets. We had many bankruptcies. We had many problems. But America became the most successful country in the 20th century. So sure, if you think there are going to be no problems, there's no place for you to go. Every place has problems. And yes, there are going to be more problems. But what you just described is probably a bottom in Colombia. Many things have been going wrong. Well, you're not supposed to buy when everything's going right. Go to the day trading academy. They will tell you, do not buy when things are great, buy when things are cheap.
And with oil coming down, what do you think the repercussions are of low oil?
Well, it depends on. Germany loves it. In Japan, they wake up every morning and say, "My goodness, this is wonderful." China loves it. It depends on. Russia is not so keen. Saudi Arabia is not so keen. Texas is not so keen. It depends on where you are. Some people love it. Some people don't. The result of this collapse is putting the problem. The situation is known reserves of oil have been declining for years. Then fracking came along, and fracking was wonderful. Fracking was a miracle, but it became a bubble. If you could spell fracking, people would write you a check and invest with you. But then, of course, people were, oh my gosh, they got to make money. They got to pay us back. And so now many frackers are going, if fracking's great, but it's not a miracle. It's not, you have to make money. So some of them are going bankrupt. Production is going down. That will continue. Fracking is not going to disappear, but it's going to disappear unless you're efficient, unless you can make money. So oil is in the process of making a bottom. We'll look back in a few years and realize in the 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22 period, oil, you know how bottoms, they go up and down, and then eventually they take off. That's what's happening with oil.
Due to the fact that you say that we are having a potential bottom, I've never heard you talk about dividend investing before. When we had this huge crash, a lot of the big oil companies that never dropped their dividends since the Second World War, some of their dividends were at 15, 18% Shell, for example, before they actually slashed their dividend. Do you still see big oil as a good investment or a good opportunity possibly for someone?
Well, if you can get your timing right, yes. As I said, oil is making a bottom, but bottoms don't go pop and then straight up. Bottoms take a while to form. And so the bottoms are forming. And if you're a good timer and good trader, of course, maybe I should watch Day Trading Academy to find out when to buy Shell, when to buy Exxon or some of these companies.
And you talked a lot about the opportunities that you saw in Zimbabwe after especially Mugabe wasn't there anymore. Do you still think that that's a good place to be able to look for some opportunities, considering that they may be moving in the right direction?
Well, I put a little bit of money into Zimbabwe recently, not enough to even talk about, just enough to make sure I remember. Normally, the way these things work, when a strong guy leaves, whether it's a company or a family, whatever, the next generation, that they wind up in a struggle. But then after the struggle, and it seems to me that's what we're in that period now in Zimbabwe, they're fighting it out. Mugabe was there 35 or 40 years. So there was a vacuum. Now all the guys are fighting and women are fighting. And so now is probably the time. If you don't know about Zimbabwe, you should be learning about Zimbabwe, because somebody's going to emerge from this. The country is going to enter stability. Once upon a time, it was one of the richest countries in the British Empire. It will be again. Not next week, but it will be again. And that's legal. It's legal for America. I think it's legal for Americans. I hope it's legal for Americans to invest in Zimbabwe.
Do you see any opportunities in other countries in Africa? For example, maybe not right now, but if there's some changes along the way, maybe there's some other opportunities down the line?
Well, there are over 50 countries in Africa. So, of course, Angola's collapsed with oil prices collapsing. There are probably going to be opportunities there. Ghana, yes, Ghana's, like everybody else in Africa, is having problems right now, but they have a government which understands what they're supposed to do and perhaps will do. Ethiopia, same thing. Ethiopia, the people in Ethiopia know what you're supposed to do, and they seem to be trying to do it. But please, Marcelo, if people don't know where Ethiopia is, please don't go start investing in Ethiopia. If you don't know where these places are and don't know a lot about them, for goodness sakes, do not invest in those places.
I actually used to live in Ethiopia. It's actually one of my favorite countries. I think it's fascinating. The people, the history, the food. I know you've been there as well, right? On the trip around the world.
Yeah. No, it's great. I love Ethiopia. But as I say, if you don't know where it is, if you can't spell Ethiopia, please don't invest in Ethiopia.
Now, and I train a lot of young people, Jim, about investing and trading, especially in Latin America. These emerging economies, they're not as adept as Americans, for example, at the financial markets. What Yeah, I've been trying to tell them your advice, go learn tractors, but unfortunately they don't want to learn how to drive tractors. They want to learn about stocks. So, first of all, what motivated you to get into this industry, to learn about investing and learning about the stock market?
Well, I knew nothing about it. I was a young college student who was confused like everybody else. I happened to get a summer job on Wall Street, and it was so wonderful because here was a place that would pay me to understand the world and know what was going on. And that was my passion, even as a kid. I wanted to know about the world and what was happening everywhere, and I wanted to see everywhere. So here was a place that would pay me. And they'd pay me a lot of money if I did it well. So for me, it was my passion. I thought I was going to go to law school and business school and medical school. Well, thank goodness. If I hadn't stumbled onto that Wall Street to that Wall Street job, summer job, I'd probably be a lawyer in New York or Atlanta or something now.
And what kind of advice would you give your younger self about learning about the stock market and investing?
Well, don't do it unless you love it, especially now because, finance is going to go into a period where things are not so great for several years, quite a few years probably. So if you love it, go. When I went to Wall Street, it was a backwater. I remember my professors used to say, "Well, what? Why are you interested in Wall Street into investments? It's nothing. It's a backwater." And they were right, but I didn't know that, and I didn't listen to them because I loved it. So if you love it, then that's what you should do. If you don't love it, think about farming. Think about something else that you really love. The most important is to find what you love, and that's why you will be successful. And if you're not successful, at least you're happy. You don't care if you're successful because you're happy.
Now, you talked a lot about farming and agriculture. Are there any regions of the world that you would tell people, well, maybe there's some opportunities here, or maybe over here, maybe some that you're looking at or that you've heard of or that you've seen?
Well, Russia, anybody who's read any novels or history knows that Russia's had periods when they were fabulous at agriculture. And now every morning, Russian farmers wake up and say, "Thank you, Mr. Trump. Thank you, Mr. Trump," because he put sanctions on Russian agriculture. So it's booming, has to boom. So they love the sanctions from the US. China, China has said in Beijing, they point out that the past 40 years, the people in the cities have done very well, but the people in the countryside have not done so well. So the Chinese government will do just about anything you want if you want to live in the countryside or become a farmer. So these are places, agriculture is certainly not making a top, it's making a bottom. It's been a disaster for a long time. These are countries though where you have the added influence of special situation, Chinese government, sanctions against Russia, places like that. But there's certainly other places. We've talked about Colombia, if you get the right products in the right area. Venezuela, which is a nightmare. Zimbabwe. One of the reasons Zimbabwe was so successful as part of the British Empire was because of agriculture. Not now. Mugabe ruined it, totally ruined it. But that might be an opportunity.
Now, something a little bit off topic that is in economics and finance. We've had a situation where the magnetic North Pole of the Earth has been racing a lot faster now than before towards Siberia. Do you think that could mean something?
Well, historically, to the extent we know that this kind of thing has happened before, and it may well be, the Aztecs and the Egyptians, some of the older cultures have said that periodically the Earth resets. They call it different things depending on where. So maybe it's happening again. And if that's the case, Marcel, it doesn't really matter, does it? We're not going to be around. If the whole world is suddenly going to reset, and the North Pole is going to be the South Pole, or whatever's going to happen, as some of the ancient cultures have said, I guess it really won't matter.
Now, along those lines, we have a situation where a lot of our high-tech powerhouses in the U.S. are based kind of concentrated on the West Coast, right between Seattle and San Francisco. Not the best places when it comes to, everybody talks about the big one that's supposed to hit all the time, the earthquakes or the volcano up in around Seattle. Do you see any challenges to that based on that? All our, that kind of concentration of our hard tech powerhouses are there in that region?
Well, I'm not a geologist, so you're asking the wrong person, and I'm sure most geologists will get it wrong too. But if the big earthquake is coming, they're in the wrong place. They should be in Shenzhen in China or Austin in Texas. I mean, there are places, there are technological powerhouses developing in the world. And maybe if one knows or if one is worried, then one should move out of, of the earthquake belt there on the West Coast.
If we do have, let's say, for example, the big one that hits California, or like a hurricane, a big one like we had before, maybe both at the same time, do you think that there's a situation where the insurance industry and the reinsurance industry is capable of surviving?
Some will, yes, some will. So not everybody is exposed to the West Coast of America. Uh, some have plenty of capital. Warren Buffett claims he has plenty of capital and he's not overexposed anywhere. I don't know. I haven't looked, but no, I know there are going to be some people if we have that kind of disaster. There are always some people who come out of any disaster doing very well. The Asian countries, Japan, Korea, China, have a word. And by the way, it's the same symbol and all the same character in all the world. Basically, in Japanese, it's kiki. And what it is, opportunity and disaster are the same thing. And all Asian cultures have this word because they've been around a long time. And it's true. Opportunity and disaster go hand in hand. So, yes, if what you just said happens, it's going to be horrible for a lot of people, but it's going to be wonderful for somebody. If you know who,
And do you
if you
think
know
with
who, if you know who, don't announce it now. Send me an email. Okay.
and do you think with what's going on in the world, you talked about the crash and the debt, it's not only on the federal level, but the states and the cities and corporations now, people as well. Do you think that the age of the superpower is over?
Well, the age of the superpower has always been over. There's always somebody coming up and somebody going down. You know, Spain, once upon a time, was the world's unbelievable, rich and powerful. Everybody's had its day in the sun. Not everybody, but many people have had their day in the sun. But that always changes. So the day of the superpower is not over. You pick the superpower. Their day is over because superpower 100 years ago it was United Kingdom. There was no number two. But the United Kingdom is no longer the number one and only superpower in the world. So the days of the superpower are not over. It's the seats are always changing. The names on the bulletin board are always changing.
And the current superpower, the US, what are your thoughts on the progressive movement in the US? The AOCs, the new generation, the Green New Deal.
Well, that's what happened in the UK. It always happens when people get in trouble. They look for an easy answer. They look for a free lunch. That's happening now. That's what happened to the 100 years, 1920. The UK was it. But as things went wrong in the UK, people came along and said, we want a free lunch. Give us an easy answer. And you know the rest of the story. It's always happens. That's the way human beings are, the way the world works. And the United States is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world now. And we have added huge amounts of debt in the last few days, weeks. So is that good to maintain our status as the world superpower? History would show it's not.
And last but not least, what are your thoughts about the nationalism and the populism that's going on in the world? Trump, America first, European Union. What are your thoughts on that?
People always like to blame. First of all, people like to look for easy answers. The easiest answer is to blame the foreigners. This has always happened throughout history. I'm not picking on America or anybody. Always blame the foreigners, always look for the easy answer, and it's happening again. But this is nothing unusual, Marcelo. This is the way it's always worked. I guess the main lesson of history is we don't learn the lesson of history. History teaches us all these things, but people don't learn. Or even if you explain it to them, they don't care. They don't listen. They think that Mr. Trump, you can say to Mr. Trump all day, nobody's ever won a trade war. Trade wars are not good. Mr. Trump knows he's smarter than history. He doesn't care about history, no matter what history says. I'm smarter than history. Well, that's what they always say. We never learn the lessons of history.
And with the election coming this year, what are your thoughts or opinions about what's coming in terms of the election year for the U.S.?
Well, I would suspect Mr. Trump will win because it's very difficult historically to replace a sitting president. If he needs votes in this state, he spends a lot of money over there in that state. The opposition cannot do that. And that's why sitting presidents nearly always, not always, but nearly always get reelected. So I would suspect Mr. Trump will be reelected unless something really strange happens. And even if something strange happens, as I say, he's got the position that he can spend money or start a war or whatever he needs to do to get reelected.
Well, those are all the questions I have for you, Jim. Thank you very, very much. Again, I want to thank you for the birthday surprise that you did years ago for me. I really appreciate that. And I'll talk to your assistant and send you that coffee. I guarantee you're gonna love it.
Okay, Marcelo. Well, I hope I see you in Colombia or somewhere in the future. Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jim.
You.